I'm Joel Olison. I'm a director at Perficient and for the Microsoft practice. I'm an MVP and a regional director, and I'm going to be your MC for today. I'll be pulling up the slides in just one moment. And let me hand this over to Ron to introduce himself.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Ron Jones, Director of Modern Workplace for Perficient. I'd like to welcome all of you to our virtual team summit. I know you heard my voice earlier, but really looking forward to a great day of education, shared thoughts, best practice, and of course, just discussions around teams. And of course, with everything changing over the last month, how that's affecting us and, moving forward, how we think things will change even more. Great to meet everyone today.
Hey, Joel, I don't know where you want to go next, but I'll jump in here. I'm David Chapman. I'm the Managing Director and Chief Strategist of Perficient's Organizational Change Management Practice. We think about change management, it's all about user engagement and adoption. And with something like Teams, frankly, it's the harder part in what we're doing. So we will be spending some time on that in the second session, I believe, this morning. And I look forward to that aspect of our conversation as well.
I guess I'll go next. I am Mark Doberstein. I'm a practice architect with the Modern Workplace team. I've been with Perficient about 3.5 years, working also in the Microsoft infrastructure and services realm for about 20 plus years, and focusing on security and identity services. So later on, I'll be talking about security with remote work for Office 365.
And I guess last but not least, hello everyone, good morning. My name is Trevor Miller. I am one of our solutions architects out of our real-time communications practice. So Mark and I are both on the same team, two sides of the same coin. But I've been in the UC space for probably, at Perficient, it's been a little over 6 years. I'm here in Nashville, Tennessee. Spent some time in internal IT for a company in Illinois prior to that, but about 14, 15 years total. So it's crazy to think that time has gone by that quickly. But I'll be talking later specifically around network performance and some of the real-time communications aspects of Teams, like what we're doing today, some of the best practices, and how that has definitely upended the status quo for working in a building versus working from home. So it's good to be here, and I will pass it off to either Ron or Joel.
That's awesome. Thanks, Trevor. We also have two guest speakers today, Michelle and Ed. Michelle, are you still with us?
I sure am.
Great. Let's get a quick intro from you, and then Ed, you can go next.
All right, sounds great. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Gilbert, and I work at Microsoft. I am the Teams technical specialist, and I'm going to be closing out. So I'm really excited to do the keynote and talk to you all about what's new, what's coming, kind of do a level set of where we've been, what we've accomplished, and then dive into a jam pack of all the new features that are coming. So happy to be here. Thanks, Joel.
Awesome. We're looking
It's great
forward
to have you on, Michelle.
And Ed Sinez from Tygraph.
Hi, welcome, and pleased to see so many people who have joined us today. So Ed Sinez, I'm the president and co-founder of a company called Unlimited Viz, which are the makers of Tygraph. Today we'll be talking about measuring adoption through change management processes, and with a specific focus now, as things have changed to more of a work from home environment, kind of getting a lens into what's going on with your workforce, both from a just is it on perspective, as well as understanding kind of sentiment analysis and what the vibe is of your organization, measuring signals coming out of Teams. So thank you. Back over to you, Ron and Joel.
Thanks a lot, Ed. So up on the screen now, you can actually see the agenda for today. And what's most important is we want to make sure that this is something we're going to be here. Basically, we're starting at 9 local time in Minneapolis, and we'll be finishing up right around 4:30-ish. Basically, there is a gift card that we're going to be giving away for those who stick with us. Your participation would be valuable to be throughout the day. But at the same time, we understand people have other things going on for individual sessions, but we'd love it if you could join us for as many of those sessions as possible. We've got a great agenda for today. You've seen some of our speakers, but we even for the lunch break, we think it'd be kind of cool for those who want to, when we take the break for lunch, to go get your lunch and then come back, and we can actually continue to do kind of more of a casual chat over the lunch break, so you can kind of get to know some of the your fellow attendees a little bit more. And what I want to do, we have about, it looks like 67 attendees on right now. What we're going to do is I'm going to call out the name, and what we'd like to have is like you talk about your name, your role, and then essentially what you'd like to get out of today. And if you want to be able to give us some context about where you're at with your team's deployment or Office 365, that would be great. But we do want to keep it somewhat brief. But since we're going to be together with each other for a while today, it'd be great if we could just do kind of a brief introduction. And I'm going to just call out the name, and then you can just come off mute and introduce yourself. And the first one we have is Andrea. Or Andrea Liggett. And if they don't hear their name, I'll go to the next one. Go ahead, Andrea.
Yeah.
I see that you're off mute now.
I'm with a consulting company here in the Roseville area in Minnesota, and we have been using Skype for Business for our audio only and video conferencing for maybe it's been a couple years now. We are just transitioning at the moment to Teams for that and getting off Skype for Business. We've got some data in an old SharePoint site that we'd like to transition into the newer on Office 365. So yeah.
Great. Next up we have is Andre.
Good morning. My name is Andrei Kiselev. So I am with the Global Partnership for Education, which is a part of the World Bank Group. So we're focusing on providing grants to developing countries to strengthen their educational systems. So World Bank is in transition to Office 365 in general and the collaboration tool specifically. So I'm here to learn a little bit more about the governance, how to bring all these nice tools together, Teams, generic SharePoint, the SharePoint sites in each individual teams, and Yammer, and bring this all together in a meaningful both collaboration tool and sort of the organizational level file storage with efficient search and sort of helping everybody be more efficient. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. And Angelo or Angelo? Ron? Ron and
hi. Yeah, it's Ron Angelo. I'm with PRA Health Sciences, and we're in the process of migrating Skype for Business to Teams. It involves close to 18,000 users in over a dozen countries. So it's quite a project, and hopefully just get some more tips and tricks about deploying Teams in a large scale environment, how to handle the influx of calls that'll come in with the different features, and just different deployment strategies is what I'm looking to gain out of this.
That's great. Next up, we have Landon.
Hi, my name's Landon Bolster. I'm with Thomson Reuters. It's a new role for me, but we have Teams and Office 365 rolled out, and again, just a new subject matter for me. So I'm trying to pick up everything I can here as I work with the group.
Next up we have is Ben.
Hi, Ben Dumke, work for a small K-12 in Northeast Wisconsin. Really just looking for more background and more options for supporting teams and things as opposed to using things like Zoom or other apps, video conferencing stuff that is maybe not as secure or compliant with regulations for students.
And BJ? Okay, we'll come back to BJ. Brent Solom?
Yeah, hi. Brent Solom. I'm with Target Corporation, and we're well adopted into many of the Office 365 tools, but we have held off on Teams for a variety of reasons and are starting to kind of dip our toe in that water and just trying to accumulate information about how to best do that, how to best move there.
Excellent. Brian Sieferman.
Yeah, hi guys. You all know me just because I work for Perficient as well, just serving as a technical consultant, just listening in on here as well.
It's great to have you.
Thanks.
Bunny?
Hi, I'm Bunny Rowlett. I work with Pulte Corporation, and we have rolled out Teams as more of a proof of concept in the IT department. Now we're looking at rolling it out to the rest of the company, and the administration piece has been assigned to my team, and we weren't part of the proof of concept, so we're having to like catch up real quick.
Got it. Carolyn.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Olson with Mortensen Construction in Minneapolis, and we are piloting teams with a bunch of groups, both in our headquarters office and throughout our project sites. And we are working to roll teams out to everybody this year, and just trying to figure out how best to do that. Thanks.
Yeah. So those of you who are rolling out Teams, it'd be interesting to know if you're using Skype now or if you're using some Cisco tool or whatever you're migrating from. It'd be interesting to hear that. David Carter. Cassie Murillo.
Hi, I'm Cassie Murillo. I'm a project manager for a builder title company. I'm located in Texas, and our IT department has been using Teams for several months now. We're just about to roll it out to the rest of our team and the rest of our business, and we're basically looking for some tips and tricks of some training materials and how to better utilize Teams, and we're coming off of Skype right now.
Awesome. It's great to have you. Chad Riley.
Yeah, hi, Chad Riley with Carver County. We are just kind of starting our rollout to O365 and just want to get some adoption tricks for teams.
Great. Christopher Charles.
Yeah, hi. With Pulte Group, as Bunny mentioned earlier, with the same company. I'm a project manager. We are currently in the process of rolling out Teams. We are a Skype shop. Currently, we're running in island mode. We're just trying to get some more best practices, maybe some more adherence and governance around rolling it out.
Great. Danielle.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Danielle Pera, and I work for AMN Healthcare, specifically a division of Revenue Cycle Solutions. So it's been a bit of a jolt with healthcare. And I recently just trained about 200 people that we migrated over, knowing that we, by Q3, we're leaving WebEx is the goal, and IT is you know, in lead of this, but I just recently trained a bunch of people, so I can share with you what I know.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Eric Dean. Okay. Jaya.
Oh, hey, good morning, all. My name is Jayaprakash Tutugu, and I'm from Global Medical Response Company. It's provider for ambulance services, and I'm with a technical consultant working on. And I wanted to, like, we are migrating to Microsoft Teams, so I just wanted to know about how Teams is working apart from the Skype business. And I would like to share something which I rarely come across anything on this. Thank you.
Thanks. Adnan.
Hi, this is Adnan Hassan. I work at CFPB, and we are rolling out Teams. My main focus will be the governance and how we're going to transition off users from Skype, and we even have WebEx as well. So, but our end goal would be transition everyone off from both these tools towards Teams.
Cool. Daryl.
Hello, I'm Daryl Fitzhugh. I'm primarily application support role with Global Medical Response. We use Skype and WebEx, but Skype's going away. We're currently using Teams. Teams has many aspects, and I just want to become proficient with it, since that's what the future is, and that's what we're going to be using.
Great. Yassine.
Hi, I'm Yasin Gilul. I'm working in Para Health Science with Eric and Ron, and they produced before. And we're just here to see more tricks about Teams with all my colleagues.
Yassine.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Yasin. I'm from Para Health Science, working with Eric and Ron, and they produced themselves before.
Yeah. And Pam.
Yep, Pam Hall from Egg Country Farm Credit Services, and we use a variety of tools, but are hoping to streamline in Teams in the middle of our rollout, and I'm here to listen and learn.
Great. Adam.
Hi, this is Adam here.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Adam here.
Yep.
We're hearing things like
We can hear you. Yeah, go for it.
Hi, this is Adam here. We're hearing things like this. We are in the process of going from Skype for Business into Teams. Sure, off this outbreak, working from home has been tremendously helped by Teams, and we're looking at rolling firm-wide with it.
Thank you. Ian. Jay.
Hi, yes, work for Pulte Group. Just also we're, we had teams working for IT, and we're Skype for Business currently, and we're looking to transition and also rolling out Teams to the rest of the company, just trying to gather as much info as possible.
Jim.
Yeah, this is Jim running Carver County. We're primarily a Jabber user for the last 8 years, and we're just rolling out our implementation in Office 365. Been planning this for a couple of years, so I'm just interested in anything, what this can do to help us, and anything that can help us speed this along, this rollout of Teams. We're also, with the COVID, we went pretty heavily into WebEx too to help with that. So I'd be curious to see how we could use Teams instead of the WebEx.
Yeah, Yeah, I not that I want to slow this down any. I spent some time with Jabber and with WebEx. I was so excited to use Teams. I'm excited for you guys. Kaiku, Arian. Karen Grace.
Karen Grace, Blue Cross of Kansas City. We're beginning our Teams rollout after an IT pilot, and I'm focusing on business adoption.
Great, thanks to have you. Keaton. Lakani.
Hi, this is Farzana. I have joined from Enthrive. We have been using Teams for a while now, but wanted to learn more about it. We also use Skype for meetings, so wanted to see what are our options.
Great to have you. Leslie.
Good morning. I'm from the same organization as Danielle Pera, AMN Healthcare. We have rolled out Teams for everyone to use, but we haven't yet finished our transformation by, as she mentioned, getting rid of some of our other tools, WebEx, Box, Jabber, are some that come to mind. So excited to hear what tips and tricks everyone has to share.
Yeah, and I do hope that our other speakers are paying attention to notes as to. It looks like on the call we have a lot of migration, so it's great to have that context as we go into our sessions. I know this is a little bit slow, but I do think this is going to be very valuable for today. Lisa.
Lisa Lim, Senior Manager at St. Michelle Wine Estates outside of Seattle. We're just learning about more Teams. We use Skype for Business and have a legacy SharePoint 2010 team sites.
Thanks for joining us. Lisa Wu. Mary Chilvers.
Hello, this is Mary. Good morning, everyone. I'm from the Department of Human Services, specifically in the Disability Services Division, and we've just been approved to add in Teams, and so I'm working with the enterprise to make it happen for our team. So just trying to pick up some tips and tricks and setup and all sorts of things. So thank you.
Matt McClure.
Yeah, hi, I'm Matt McClure from Prime Therapeutics. We're recently just starting to deploy using the shadow IT methods and getting our executives in to test out the waters. We've been currently using Cisco Jabber and WebEx, so we're definitely excited with all the new adoptions and moving into Teams and hoping to have a full production deploy by next year.
Excellent. Melina.
Hi, this is Melina. I'm from Aptian, India. We recently migrated to Teams and would like to understand more on the best practices in Power BI.
Great. Muthana.
Muthana from Aptian. Melina and I are colleagues. We migrated to Teams about 7 months ago. Yes, we did have Jabber, WebEx, Box, Smartsheets, all of that kind of now rolled up into Teams. So also like looking at SharePoint integration, governance, something which this time. So that's my takeaway from today's meeting. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, it is interesting having a Minneapolis event that when we made it virtual, we've now got quite the global audience. Nate. Okay, Ozan.
Ozan from ING Netherlands. We are currently using Skype for Business on-premise. I'm looking for challenge and best practices and governance topics for migration to Teams.
And I did see that I didn't give Nate enough time. Nate, do you want to come back on? Thanks.
Sure. Thanks, guys. Nate with Polte Group. A couple of my colleagues are on here too. We're currently Skype for Business Enterprise Voice. We're probably going to do a phased approach, but eventually we want to get our Enterprise Voice up there too. So yeah, anything and everything. Have some background knowledge, but just looking to gain additional insights from you guys too.
Awesome. So a lot of you who've been talking about the migration and the network and the move from Skype and the Cisco technologies, definitely don't miss Trevor's presentation. His is an excellent one where it goes a lot into kind of more depth around some of those best practices and network and making sure it's a good, smooth transition. Rajesh. All right.
Hello. Yeah. Hello.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
We can hear
This
you.
is Rajesh from Aptian India. So yeah, as Mutana, Milana, and everyone, we are all colleagues. So we migrated to Teams 7 months back. So we need to know much more about the Teams. Thank
you. Rich.
Yes, Richard Wright. I'm a O365's product specialist with King and Spalding law firm in Atlanta, Georgia. We're in the initial phases of a rapid rollout of Teams due to the COVID virus. So right now we're currently using Cisco WebEx and Jabber and looking to get a better understanding of securing the Teams environment overall.
Great. And Rosemary.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Terranova. I work for a title company for a new home builder. I'm located out of Chicago. Our department is currently using Teams, but we will be rolling it out to other departments shortly. So we're just switching from Skype, looking to gain, as much information as possible.
Awesome. Manish.
Hi, this is Manish. I'm from Toronto, Canada. I work with Ontario Telemedicine Network. We've recently just been merged with Ontario Health. We've been using Teams since 2018. And at that time, we were not sure if we were making the right decision. So we are far ahead in the game. We're using Teams for almost every application within the OC 365 platform. And as we move on, just experiencing what are the best practices and sessions like this definitely help us to learn, understand more, what are more features within Teams. But yeah, just for the rest, I know most of them are migrating. It's a very excellent platform. A lot of opportunities. You can do lots. The sky is the limit.
Great. Jeff.
Hi, Jeff Rutledge. I'm with KPMG International. I'm based in Calgary, Canada. So we've largely completed our deployment. We've just hit the milestone of about 200,000 users on Teams now. So I'm mostly interested in kind of once the dust settles, because that was all done very rapidly, how we're going to start shifting to how do we get the most out of it. So that's really where my focus is.
Great. Sabrina. Sarah.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I work with Oliver Media in Plymouth, Minnesota, and we have used Teams on my team. We do sales support for quite a while, and we just kind of rolled it out to the rest of the people in the company and told them about it once we all started working remotely. So mostly here just to find out more and pass on everything I learned to a lot of the company and how it can benefit our team during this remote time.
Great to have you. Scotty.
Hi, my name is Scotty Rodriguez. I work for Novellis in the headquarters in Atlanta. Just trying to get best practices and governance of teams.
Nice. Sheila.
Hi, good morning. My name is Sheila Miller. I work for Polaris in Minneapolis, and we have been rolling out teams in a small scale for the last year, but we're right at the crux of getting started to plan for a broad scale enablement. So my role is very focused on the user experience and user adoption. So I'm looking forward to learning more information about how I can be very effective in doing that.
Great to have you. Kristen. Michael Starr.
Hi, good morning. My name's Mike Starr. I'm with Veritiv Corporation. We're headquarters in Sandy Springs, Georgia, outside of Atlanta. I'm up in Rochester, New York. My team is responsible for change management and training here at Veritiv, and we've been a Cisco WebEx house for at least the last half dozen years. So as we are upgrading all of our users to Windows 10, Microsoft 365, we are in the process of also rolling out Microsoft Teams to everybody. Our pilot's going to be initially with IT, and then from there we'll roll it out officially to the rest of the organization. So I'm looking forward to anything that I can pick up today to help with that rollout and training.
Yep. Brian Steger.
Hey, Brian Steger. I'm with Braun Intertech. I'm sort of filling in for a coworker who was planning to come to this but couldn't. We've been using Teams internally in our group since probably it was first available, but right now we're looking at pushing it to the whole company because of the remote work thing. So yeah, today, I mean, we're just kind of looking, it's grown organically, but we're just sort of looking for some best practices and reel back some of the mistakes we've already made.
Gotcha. Well, great to have you. Steven Solove.
Hi, this is Steve Solove. I'm from Pulte Financial Services. We're part of the Pulte Group family of companies, which you've heard a couple other people talk about. I'm leading the efforts of getting this started in the financial services group, and same interests as the others.
Great to have you. Joel.
Joel Swayla with Global Medical Response. We're currently using Skype as a company, but we've been proof of concept on Teams in the IT organization, similar to what other people have been doing. So I've been trying to learn as much as possible about it, and it's definitely an improvement over Skype. So I'm trying to encourage people to start moving over.
Excellent. Ted.
I'm also with, name's Ted Creekmore with Pulte Group. We've been using Teams with our IT department for the last year, and we're about ready to push it out to the business. So we're just looking for best practices and the best way to do that.
Got it. Thomas Flynn. Okay. Tom Johnson. Tony Leonardo.
Hi, folks. Yeah, I'm a partner development manager at Microsoft, and I work with the folks here at Perficient, and love hearing all the migration stories. And I live and work on Teams every day.
Great. Great to have you. Valerie. There you go. Now I can hear you.
Sorry. I'm Valerie Fahel Schaefer, and I am the IT specialist for our small organization, the STEM Centers in South Carolina. We have already moved to Teams. but I'm trying to juggle a lot of different Microsoft things and trying to keep up with the newest stuff and learning the tips and tricks. And it's really hard because there's always new changes. So I'm hoping to get ahead without having to read 5,000 updates on the Microsoft site.
Right. Yeah, it's a big job. I can imagine. Steve. Steve
Hi,
Woodstrand.
I'm Steve Woodstrand with DataSite in Minneapolis, and we are currently and have been for some time in islands mode with Skype and Teams. Complicated a little bit. We also have a core group that uses Slack, and probably turn off Skype pretty soon. So, any pointers on winning adoption with Slack users would be awesome. I'm also looking for some information around governance and anything new that's coming.
Great. Yeah, and you mentioned a couple of sessions that we do have coming up. The adoption as well as the roadmap session at the end of the day. So definitely don't miss those. Lance.
Yeah, hello, Lance Yoder with Cerner Corporation. Manage our workforce adoption team. We've been heavy users of Teams for quite some time. Made the switch full over from Skype for calling and meetings last year, and just interested in always like hearing how other companies approach adoption and change management issues.
All right. Well, that was running through the list. I know that I did go kind of fast. If there's anybody else who's on who wants to introduce themselves that I may have missed over, I'll give it 1 second. Go for it. Okay. All right. Well, we've got a packed agenda for you today. Ron and I, we're going to jump into this session on empowering your organization with Teams and remote work. We want to catch you up on what happened with crisis management. Microsoft put out a number of different templates. And yeah.
That's right, Joel. We're really excited about this one. Let's get started. So there's a couple sites of Perficient, so pardon us for a second, but we're probably one of the largest consulting firms you've never heard of. About 4,000 employees across 20 offices in the US with delivery centers internationally in China and India and other places. So like I said, 20 plus locations. We're nationally traded, of course, on the NASDAQ, and I mentioned our delivery centers and alliances and partnerships, and of course, one of the premier partners for Microsoft, ranked in their 0.01% of partners, which is really cool. Our Microsoft practice specifically has taken over 5 million seats to the cloud, and things that differentiate us, of course, are our dedicated agency for delivering employee experiences, our organizational change management practice, which serves our Microsoft practice and partners with us really well, but also they work in other technologies. So they have a really holistic viewpoint of your pain points as, technicians and whatnot. And of course, our dedicated voice and security offerings out of our Microsoft practice really help us to go wide and deep on the Microsoft stack, especially when it comes to Teams. So we'll get into our agenda now. We'll talk about crisis response and the foundations of that. Then we'll get into improving teamwork. Talk about the vision for Teams overall, how that is influenced by adoption change management and vice versa. Extending Teams is a huge piece of this. And at the end, we have some resources, some good reading and whatnot from all over that we've kind of pulled together into one cohesive voice, but you can see where some of these ideas and things come from and go down some of those rabbit holes on your own as needed.
Yeah, and definitely if there's something that comes to mind around questions for this first session, we're going to kind of drive through it and save questions at the end. But some of the other sessions, we'll let those speakers talk too, if they want you to interrupt them for questions. For this first one, we're just going to drive through and save your questions till the end.
Yeah, and feel free to utilize the chat as well. We'll try our best to keep track of those and answer those accordingly. So no worries. All right, so let's talk about crisis.
So on this first,
go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. For this first section, I mentioned that it's kind of understanding what's going on in this world. We are in it's a really kind of crazy time with crisis. But if we step back from this individual situation, crisis management is something that organizations need to be prepared for. And the more prepared you are, the better off you're going to be for sure. But when you talk about crisis management, there's a number of different points to kind of focus on. Communications is number one. It's a very big one, making sure that those who are in the organization, you don't want them to, you want to have a place where they can find answers to their questions. People can be, there's a reason we do fire drills, so that people know what to do. They can be calm and do what they should do. And that ability of kind of, what do you do in a disaster? What do you do in a crisis? And there's an audit that essentially you can do. And there's a reference there to Jonathan Bernstein, who put together who does this for a living around crisis and response. There's understanding that time to respond, the financial aspects of that, what it can do to your reputation as an organization. And as well, transparency is a huge part of this, making sure that the executives and stakeholders understand what's actually happening here. Because in any kind of crisis, it's about your organization and about the people, but also your customers, your partners, and really understanding, are you prepared, and being prepared. Go to that next slide.
Yeah, sure.
So one of the great things here is Microsoft has put together a number of solutions. In fact, it almost seems like Microsoft had kind of put this mandate out. Hey, we want to see the different product teams put together solutions for our customers, for their customers. And essentially, there's a great crisis management solution, kind of communication site on the SharePoint side. There's a Yammer community for questions and answers, as well as a place where executives can do their kind of executive briefing, where they can talk to the employees. Part of that crisis management site we'll go into a little bit, is a place where the employees can go for information. They know that there's a portal where here's your contacts in your region, here's any kind of regional resources, but as well things like a Twitter feed from the CDC, so you can get your news but also organizational information. And a lot of companies, they kind of scrambled and had a really difficult time with this. But essentially, what Microsoft has done is put up these great little templates for ones where you can essentially kind of follow it as a best practice, and it's some really great stuff. There's a number of great resources on the team side, essentially supporting the remote work. And on the Power Platform side, there's some templates, essentially an FAQ bot, crisis FAQ bot, as well as like a work status mobile template, integrating with Power Automate and Power Apps. Some really great stuff.
Exactly. It's a great foundation, to your point, Joel, for building upon to make it yours for your organization. It's very easy to roll these things out. I mean, if you go to the lookbook, you can download the crisis management site, within 5 minutes. And then, you can plug all these things, whether it's the Power Apps or, the different feeds from your channel community, from your Yammer communities and whatnot, back into Teams, centralizing it as your hub for all this information, while also, driving your traffic to the individual spots that you need to as you decide. But you already have all the working pieces within your organization as a user of Office 365. So it's just a matter of putting the Lego pieces together.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. Microsoft internally implemented this on their own MSW, their intranet, where they could essentially talk to communicate to their employees, and essentially it's kind of, all of these are just free solutions. They're basically templates that you can leverage, but some great stuff. Yeah, you can skip over some of this, I think. So essentially, what you saw in these templates, if you think about it, there's a number of different ways you need to communicate. There's communicate to kind of the broad employee base, but there's different kinds of communication for the different groups. So like at a regional level, being able to make sure that there's region resources. And essentially what you've got there on the right is a mapping of the tools to that audience. And as an example, at a department level, there's ways that the department needs to speak and communicate to their employees, but also with kind of your focus team of being able to kind of have like an action focus team or a task force, being able to have kind of close collaboration with, say, a virtual team, being able to mention specific people, being able to pull together task lists, and then even down to the individual being able to set up their own tasks and projects for their own alerting to make sure that they're reporting back to teammates, and being able to have those tabs. But the whole Microsoft 365 platform has really has kind of proven itself, I believe, in this crisis as a tool for communication, collaboration, meetings, and remote work. And there's a ton of great resources that Microsoft's put out there. And we want to make sure that you're aware of that. And at the very end of this deck, there's a number of links and resources. So if you're wondering where those are, it's at the end of this deck. And if you're asking, hey, where's this deck? We'll put that link back up at the end of the day to make sure everybody has access to all the slides.
That's right. And a couple things to call out here. I mean, a lot of what you find, just like in your normal social life, a lot of the articles you read and the information that you find is shared from others. So often, as a best practice, we suggest rolling out things like the Microsoft Teams manager framework, which basically, I mean, everyone's a part of a team because everyone has a manager or someone that really feeds them corporate information. So it just allows you to, one, set those up from an adoption perspective, because if you automatically have a certain amount of teams already located in your Teams app, then you're more likely to use it, especially when it comes to things that are relevant to you. So you start moving down this hierarchy of information for all employees versus the regional updates that you need so desperately to your particular location. And of course, information from your particular supervisor, boss, or even teammates. That stuff really helps you to, one, adopt the platform, but also stay informed and educated on things that are happening, because that's very important for maintaining morale and employee check-ins and other very vital activities that need to happen during times like these.
Now, one of the solutions that Microsoft has put out there for healthcare, and I just kind of want to point this one out specifically, it was actually a team solution that was built for hospitals. And this was essentially just leveraging the technology and showing a sample, kind of a case study around using Teams in a hospital. And what's cool is this is right on the front lines of COVID-19 and essentially right in the ICU. And if the problem that presented itself was nurses being able to check on patients, and obviously with the spread of the virus, the less times you actually have to go and have physical presence, because of the air and the touching and all these kinds of things, the more that they could check on their patients and make sure the patients could actually communicate to them. And they basically call those rounding. So rounding is when when the nurse goes from room to room to room, and they do this, at different intervals in different hospitals, I'm sure, but it's something they regularly do. And what Max from Microsoft, Max Fritz, had put together was this idea of a virtual rounding where you could use Microsoft Teams, because most of these do have computers in every room. And so what they've got is they've got Microsoft Teams set up where there's a meeting that's an open, active meeting, such that anytime the patient wants to talk to the nurse, they can essentially reach out through Teams, through video or voice, back to the nursing station. And so basically they've got a meeting set up for each room, and inside of Teams they can see each of the floors as well as the rooms. And the nurse who needs to go check, she can basically click through and come up on either audio or voice, and say, hey, how's it going? And be able to provide answers back to the people. And this has been a fantastic solution. We've got a lot of feedback from nurses who've said this has been a godsend, because now they're not having to go into the room as often. Obviously, there's some physical presence, but this reduces it and can actually save PPE as well, the protection equipment. Now, Microsoft has put out not only the templates you saw around Crisis, but they've actually made some app templates around a number of different solutions. In fact, the ones I would point out, especially those who are looking to kind of mature their organization and actually leveraging this to build solutions, the HR support bot is a great one. In fact, there's a lot going on with that HR solution first for HR support. There's a company communicator, an expert finder. There's an icebreaker where it essentially encourages people to kind of get to know each other. An FAQ plus kind of solution where it integrates the FAQ bot as well. But a number of different solutions where you can understand how to leverage Teams as an application platform.
That's right, Joel. And there are links to the overall app gallery for all these things. And also keep in mind, you can customize these to fit your organization, as you mentioned earlier. So it's not a matter of Fab 40 kind of situation where you're kind of put into this, super specific solution that you have to make work for you. Instead, you can use it as a foundation, one, and two, it really just allows you to expand it and customize it to your needs.
Now we have a deep dive search session, but just wanted to give you kind of a quick high level overview from the work from home security reference. So there's a number of different solutions inside of Azure that can actually help you from a protection perspective, whether it's Defender on the desktop or the MCAS, which can actually see where people are logging in from, to ensure that people aren't. There's a number of ways you can tell, hey, this person logged in here and there. One of these isn't right, and you can actually set up boundaries and protections to ensure that people should be who they are, and it being able to actually leverage AI to ensure that these are actually they're the ones who should be logging in. From a rights protection perspective, the Azure AIP and being able to set up labels, identity protection, conditional access, the MFA where it's multi-factor authentication, number of great solutions. And especially when you're trying to integrate your on-premises data and applications, as an example with the Azure AD App Proxy. So in this next section, we're going to dive in on the vision of teams. And I think what's really powerful here is a lot of people, they're trying to just get that next meeting tool, or they're focused on chat, or they're focused on being able to get what they had with Skype and beyond. And I think that what's really valuable here is understanding not only what it can do for the problems you have in front of you, but actually a great vision for teams. And so I've got a number of slides here that help you focus on the vision. And here we've got a little infographic that kind of illustrates what I was talking about earlier. Often when people are going from, say, Skype or Cisco, they're often focused on calling, chat, and meetings. But what's different about these typical chat apps and kind of chat workspaces is that there's so much more with Teams. And I like this iceberg analogy, that when you look at an iceberg, often you're so focused what's above the water that you don't realize the size of the iceberg and what's underneath it. So, often you're looking at an iceberg and you're thinking, oh, well, this is how big it is. And sometimes, yeah, there's that much more, but there's huge ones where there's just mass below the water. And this iceberg analogy works well with Teams when you start talking about this hidden rich collaboration functionality, where it integrates with storage, the file sharing. That's one of the big ones. Like those of you who are going from WebEx Teams or from Jabber and even Skype, they really don't focus on sharing files, which is a very, very common scenario. And that rich integration with SharePoint, OneDrive, in fact, there's integration with Box, like some have mentioned on the call earlier, Dropbox, Google Drive. And so when you're building your team, you can actually connect to the storage that your team uses. And by default, it does the right thing when there's a one-on-one chat with a user, where it automatically stores it in OneDrive. If you're sharing it with your team in the Teams channel, it automatically stores it in SharePoint unless you change it. There's tabs and applications, these channels where you can essentially have this really focused communication on your projects or on things that are ongoing, and organizing your applications. We've mentioned bots a couple of times. Bots are these virtual assistants who can help, whether it's driving applications or answering questions, providing kind of a streamlined interface, being able to invoke automation and gain answers. And the connectors here, when you start talking about rich integration with the Power Platform, which is a no-code, low-code type of solution for building automation, whether it's integration with applications and being able to get those work streams into your team chat-based workspace, or whether it's being able to access applications in a common interface. All right. And when you start talking about all these features, and this is not a Teams 101 type session, but just want you to be aware that there really is kind of fully featured around Teams. There's the calling plans, the chat, the apps, the connectors, and so on. It's this really focused, modern, chat-centered workspace, and it's great for being able to be a secure location, kind of bringing together all your chats, meetings, calls, files, and tools in a single place. It's really powerful at the team level, but even at an individual level, you'll notice on the roadmap with tasks and task management, it can be a really powerful place for an individual to organize their work as well. And when you start even talking about the enterprise and being able to have applications that are important for the enterprise, and even at a departmental level, when you start talking about templates and being able to have consistency across these modern team spaces, and the integration with SharePoint, where you can actually bring in news and videos and meetings that really can help an organization communicate with their employees. And that's not even to say the extranet scenario where you can actually collaborate with external guests or share files externally in a secure way as well. And this is one of my favorites as well, is this idea that when you start talking about what life is like, you often get bombarded with your inbox just being bombarded, getting hit from all channels. And what an inbox is, it's this big dumping place. Everything just comes in and it's automatically sorted based on putting what's most recent on top. But it doesn't necessarily do a good job of organizing unless people set up a ton of rules in their inbox trying to just get this concept of, wouldn't it be great if we had a work stream? And I love this quote from Ephraim Fried. The future of digital working will offer tools that tie together communications, content, tasks, applications, and collaborative works together around work streams. And these work streams inside of Microsoft Teams are our channels. These are our teams, where essentially the communication around a project can live with that project. The files and applications essentially can be part of this work stream where we work on a project, we get our updates and activities in context. It can be really, really powerful. Now, this is a little silly kind of image here that I put together, but I like this idea of when you work with Office 365 and you work individually in Outlook or Yammer or SharePoint, you have these different user experiences. But when you use and kind of start with Teams, Teams can combine and bring together this kind of Teams first approach to consuming OneDrive, SharePoint, Yammer, Stream, Planner, Project, all of these disparate individual experiences into one. And I'm a big fan of this kind of Teams first approach, of kind of a modern teamwork approach to consuming all of these different applications. Now, it's not to say that you can't have a rich experience in SharePoint, but when you start connecting Teams and SharePoint, or Yammer and SharePoint and Teams and Stream, it can actually make the user experience a ton better. It essentially can kind of help you with this approach from a vision of the best way to consume Office 365 is making sure you have a really good Teams environment, like a really good team. That's another one, and I understand there's a lot going on this, but just kind of want to say this. We step back from what Teams is, and you start talking about your intranet. You've got all these different systems of record that are out there where your data is. There's the systems of engagement where you've got your chat and your mail and all these things. And then we've got different things that kind of connect this, the Power Platform, Power Automate, that essentially connect these different pieces where you can pull in data out of Oracle or SAP or all it's any variety of different systems of record, and search and BI and say Power BI, being able to pull in those analytics into dashboards inside of that Teams experience. And even with this upcoming Project Cortex, when you start talking about the ability to start highlighting topics so that topics themselves can be pulled into a common interface, and being able to recognize and follow topics. It doesn't matter where that data is stored, but being able to quickly navigate your organizational information. And the teamwork is really at the heart of this, connected to the modern intranet, where you have your various audiences, your customers, your partners, your regions and communities and teams and tasks, all inside of this modern workplace. And different companies, it's different tools and solutions, but essentially that idea of being able to tie it together through automation into these business solutions that make sense for users.
That's right, Joel. And the other piece to that, of course, is like, how do you make these things more digestible, right? Because you can't just repeat the inbox thing again. You have to make sure that you provide context and sensibility to things, because otherwise it becomes, the new dumpster fire, right? And we want to make sure we avoid that.
Ja, nee, dat snap ik. Nee, ja, dat is altijd een beetje jammer, hè? Want
All right. And this is just the same kind of idea, but with showing some of the Office 365 tools and icons here. On the bottom, you see the Power Platform that kind of brings things together for automation. On the left-hand side, we have kind of our messaging experience and the convergence of collaboration. So you get kind of messaging and collaboration worlds coming together with automation, with this idea of this Microsoft 365 kind of pulling all this together with this kind of Teams approach. And whether your data is in Azure or Dynamics, those worlds can be connected as well.
Right, and getting to the point of sophistication that, you have a Teams first approach to 365 where, I know that the overall goal is for people to start in Teams, but that's really the driver where, collaboration, communication, and productivity are all happening within Teams. And then it's just a matter of making sure that you're providing the right levels of that to make it make sense to your particular use cases, people and their relevant information. And all those things are important for people to get their job done. And providing access to content. So then it's almost like it's replacing your intranet and some of those other point solutions, let's say, with something more cohesive. At the same time, that's where the heavy lifting and the heavy thinking needs to happen.
Yeah, and it's like SharePoint is a platform, Teams is a platform, and how you pull those worlds together can really make life easier for your users. So in this next section, we're talking about teamwork and how we can actually improve teamwork. Now, with the Teams rollout, I think what you'd notice is a lot of people are focused on how do we roll out chat and meetings. And even people brought up this idea, hey, that we've been working on this for the last 2 years. How do we actually accomplish this? Well, here I put together this idea of 7 elements of successful Teams rollout or deployment or strategy. This isn't your typical, hey, it's a SharePoint migration, we just need to get our data over there. There's a number of different things where you focus on to ensure a successful implementation. And that happens with a clear vision and roadmap. We talked about the vision, where it's like, where are we going? How do we present up that vision of what we want to accomplish with Teams? There's that executive sponsor, the person who backs you up, that provides the budget, who is on board with the strategy. And then there's basically building out your plan. This is a governance plan with roles and responsibility. I'm a big fan of the RACI chart, where it's like, okay, let me understand, where does my ownership lie? How do I work closely with the security team? How do I work really closely with the network team? And ensuring that those responsibilities are really clear. And with Teams, even within Teams, there's that aspect of, where does SharePoint, even if there is another SharePoint team, or you are the SharePoint team and the Teams team, and then there's that aspect of telephony. What about calling plans? What about meetings? When there's a problem in the conference room, who does that go to? So it's really trying to figure out this thing end to end and ensuring that there's clear ownership and responsibilities here. And you can't really tell whether you're successful or not if you don't understand clear metrics, outcomes. And I'm a big fan of being able to build dashboards that, hey, these are the key indicators that help us determine whether we are successful. This is what our goal is. Our goal is to actually see our adoption go from former tool, whether it's Jabber or Skype or Cisco Teams or whatever, to where we're going here. We want to be able to say, yes, those other tools have actually been retired, and our customers are happy in this new world. And you can actually see how the meetings are now being driven. And this big focus on adoption change management. You've heard adoption a number of times here, and you're actually going to hear a session about this. I do feel like this is one of the biggest differences between other tools. If you don't have a solid adoption change management strategy, and I do believe Champions is a big part of that, you're more likely to fail, or you're going to get piecemeal adoption. This adoption change management strategy is actually really, really key to a successful team's deployment, because people will choose the tool that they want to use. Some teams may be using texting because they're not getting what they need. They may still be using legacy tools or even downloading something off the internet. And this idea of a champions program is leveraging the business, leveraging those who are actually active with the technology, and using them as a sounding board and using them to scale. So Champions program is a really important aspect of this. And Microsoft has done a great job of putting resources out there to help people who are trying to build Champions programs inside their organizations. And this idea around training and office hours, it's essentially making yourself available in a very scalable way. You want people to be able to reach out, but you need to be able to do that in a way where you're not being randomized. And whether it's being available for a weekly call, building community, as well being able to address departmental or team-based organizational things as well. And one of the things around Teams deployment, there's a certain point where you've rolled it out, everybody has access to it, but you're wondering about maturity and how you can actually achieve some of those things on the vision, where you saw earlier, we were talking about application templates, leveraging Teams as a platform. At the heart of modern teamwork is this idea of really being able to actually use the tool to get your work done. So it's the automation and business process automation and integrating with the rest of the tools in the enterprise. And this is a Microsoft slide, but I really like this one. I think it actually summarizes in a very precise way what is the vision of the Teams platform from Microsoft. And here's three things. It's a single hub to reduce context switching and making your decisions faster. It's automating your workflows and routine tasks to increase the value of productivity, and connecting to those critical line of business data systems to service and drive digital transformation. And digital transformation is on every executive's radar, and Teams does a fantastic job of being able to help provide transparency to what's happening inside of digital transformation.
That's right. And that's often a bottom-up philosophy or action, right? Because you can push that down from the top, but then me as a team member of a specific group of folks, I want to make sure that the things that I'm doing on my level that I can control via Power Apps, or, like just streamlining some of my processes for pushing my content through the chain, that I can, take advantage of the platform and not just have the top down pushing, but also, be able to tell the story of how my group automated processes for pushing out proposals, for instance, for me, or the creation of different artifacts and whatnot to really make the platform shine and give ideas to other folks to help that adoption story.
And I'll let you take this, Ron.
Sure thing. So Forrester released its total economic impact report recently, and it just talks about how Teams saves time and puts a lot of metrics around the benefits of Teams, which is really great. So there were a few different aspects of the tax. I mean, you realize that employees save up to 8 hours a week or more through efficient meetings. And what is Teams about? It's really about helping us collaborate, whether it's around a document or around a particular meeting, or of course, communicating out to the masses. And I won't read through all of these, but really it comes down to the fact that your employees are reducing time in meetings by 20% when all is done the right way. And I realize that that's a huge best practices kind of thing to say, and it really varies by organization, but you really have to apply your culture to how you implement Teams. So if you have a very video first culture, or maybe if you should, then that your implementation may be different from someone who's prioritizing calling or maybe just collaboration. And we have to make sure that we're kind of supercharging our culture via this platform because it really helps to get things through. And when we're all working from home, that's especially important. Now let's talk about adoption and change management. You can take the chasm if you like, Joel. You can lead that one off.
Great. So essentially, when I talked about this idea of the importance of adoption change management, and the chasm is absolutely why. Essentially, if you don't do much, there's about 34% of your organization who is just clamoring for new technology that's going to help them. But then there's the 70 or 60, 66% or so that are looking at this and saying, not interested. And so you've actually got to understand, how do you actually get this over that big hump? How do you, there's a lot who say, well, what about those laggards? What about those people who just are going to hate? Well, you don't have to focus on them at the beginning. Who you need to focus on is actually those early adopters who are actually going to help champion the system, leverage them as champions, leverage them to be able to talk to the early majority and late majority. And we talk about these laggards, these people who they're the last to want to adopt it. And they may have dug in their heels on some legacy technology that they have really figured out. But the way to actually get this is through an adoption change management story. It's essentially working with your users. Otherwise, you're absolutely going to fall off that cliff and be stuck with yet another technology that IT rolled out that never really got adopted. So this, more than any other technology, I feel this is one where adoption change management absolutely makes a difference and is required. And yes, I said required in your organization. If you've got 5 people, maybe you can just bonk them on the head. But when you've got hundreds in your organization, or thousands in your organization, or hundreds of thousands, the only way to be able to get to move this and get on the other side of that curve is through an efficient and focused adoption change management strategy.
That's right, Joel. And now we're forced to change, which is even more interesting, right? So now it's a matter of, how do I supercharge this? And Dave Chapman, the head of our OCM group, will be talking about this specifically later on today. So stay tuned. And we definitely have
this is
the maturity model. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is the last one on adoption change management. Essentially, often IT is really good at deployment and activation. They can fire it up and give people the license. But often, as soon as it hits that awareness one, IT says, all right, we're done. And they hope that some PM group is going to pick up awareness. They aren't sure who's going to pick up enablement. Maybe that'll happen within the organization. And those things rarely happen. So if you start talking about this from whether it's a phased approach or whether these are the things you're focused on, it's those campaigns. And traditionally, these are not IT skills. So these things around, how do you achieve full proficiency on the tool where people are actually changing their behaviors? It often makes me think about the who moved my cheese problem of, well, guess what? There is the cheese has moved. There is a new solution. There's a better way, and it requires having that vision, and it requires the time to be able to help people understand, why did you change my process? Jabber was working just fine for me. Well, guess what? Cisco said Jabber's over. Anyway, there's a number of reasons why it's important for IT to understand that it's more than just turning the lights on.
Yeah, and to your point earlier, Joel, it's really it takes a village, right? You have to have the IT
Absolutely.
team to maintain governance and make sure that we have, the borders secured as far as security goes and whatnot. But then you get into, how do I become proficient, as it were, around just how the platform works, just basic skills around how does chat work, how does sharing a document work, how do I effectively run a meeting, and how do I communicate to a wider audience of collaborators? And then you get into some of the engagement things of like, how can I make this better and streamline how I work? And those are all different levels of sophistication that we have to be mindful of, because once we get the basics down, right? Once you flip the back of the box of Teams over and say, okay, chat, all the other stuff that we compare these tools against, now that's when you really start to get benefits. And that's when you really start to get the value of the platform and start moving into that proficiency realm of not just knowing how to chat and share documents and whatnot, but knowing how teams can make you specifically more efficient.
So this is another one that you're going to see a little bit later on. This is actually a tygraph solution built on top of Power BI. Perficient, where we work really closely with the folks who implement or who built a tygraph. We're going to be talking to Ed a little bit later on today. But the key thing here, the key takeaway, is you absolutely need to be measuring what's happening inside your organization. You absolutely, it's more than just understanding the lights are on. It's, hey, how are people using it? Is the tool we were using before going down? Is the tool we're using now going up? Well, what about department-based? Maybe we can do some gamification from a perspective of it's IT versus finance, or hey, has support started using the tool? Who are our top users? How can we reward those and build our champions program off of the people who are actually doing this right? Let's reward those who are actually working out loud and call them out and send them a gift. Let's see if we're moving the needle here. And absolutely, you want to see, are you getting return on that investment, and is that champion program working, and being able to have a really good dashboard and see how it's lighting up. Are people using it for meetings? Are they using it for calling? Are they using it for their chat, and so on? And you can even see, as an example, is Skype actually going down? So this is really valuable for being able to have that dashboard where, whether you're trying to communicate back to your executives or your sponsors, yeah, that's it. Go ahead. And in this last section, we want to dive into extensibility, but we don't have a lot of time here, and I think we don't necessarily need to go super deep based on where people are at maturity-wise. If you want to just skip. This one here, basically high level, you'll notice that we've got all these productivity apps that integrate directly right into Microsoft Teams, both the first-party Microsoft Office 365 suite, but also third-party tools that plug right in. Things like Rike for your project management, or Trello, even your ADP app, or DocuSign. Tools that actually integrate right into the interface, both as tabs or in as streams. But there's this powerful layer of where the Power Platform, whether it's your dashboards on Power BI or interfaces and Power Apps, Power Automate is our workflow type solution, and even the Power Virtual Agents, where we basically get these really great chatbots that can integrate with our line of business data, or connect to our knowledge, like through FAQ bots and that kind of thing. But it doesn't stop there. You can actually build your own tools and solutions for the verticals, for integrating with your line of business or your departmental tools, and the RPA as an example, different levels of process automation. And it's basically a number of these. So when you start talking about everything that Power Apps has access to, everything that Power Platform has access to, there's hundreds of apps that have native connectors that have actually been built by those organizations, like the Salesforce connector built by Salesforce, right in the platform. And there's a number of ways inside of Teams where you can leverage the tools that are designed to be extensible, the cards, the bots, the connectors, activity feeds, and extensions. So as you get up more on that maturity level, you can actually absolutely take advantage of Teams as a platform. And you're wondering, hey, is there any place for developers? Absolutely. In fact, there's a site specifically designed for development for Teams. And you can see there's those app templates. There's a Teams App Studio. There's some JavaScript SDK for building and interfacing with the tabs inside of Teams. Webhooks and connectors. Like I mentioned, even though there's hundreds of apps that are just already have connectors, there's an SDK and connectors for webhooks for being able to plug into your applications. The Node.js framework, .NET Bot SDK framework, and even Yeoman generator for Teams for the developers who are actually building solutions on Teams.
That's right. And it's to the point where now you're working outside of the Teams ecosystem and within it. So you're not locked into it like how we kind of, in my opinion, overdeveloped on SharePoint in the 2010 and 2013 generation. Now with this mixed approach, you get support through, SPFX web parts. So you can surface your things within SharePoint and within Teams. You're using Azure and .NET and those familiar faces, as well as the front end development pieces, to really develop solutions that can evolve with your organization and not be locked into a platform.
Yeah, and beyond. I don't know that we need to dive into all this, but basically Azure has a number of services. Teams is actually built on Azure, and these are the services it takes advantage of. So when you're talking about building your solutions on Teams, you're already built on a platform of cloud services. It was actually built from the ground up inside of Azure. It's really the first application that Microsoft has built that they actually built first on side in the cloud. Fully featured work stream. It's really, really powerful. And we talked about the templates. I think we can skip over this. I want to save time for David. Some really good stuff. This HR support app template is one that I would refer to when you build your first application. Definitely check this one out. It's even got some mobile interaction as well. And with that, we're going to take a 5-minute break, but we want to open up for any kind of initial questions. I know we kind of flew through that, but basically we'll have David start in about 5 minutes. And if you have any questions, if you'd like to come off mute, you can. And those who want to take a bio break, feel free. But let's open it up for questions. If you want to use the chat interface, you can too.
Hello, I have a quick question about if you develop apps, do you have to be a Teams admin in order to deploy those? Or do you have to work with Teams admin to introduce those in an organization?
So you do need to be an owner of the team, and the person who's running your tenant, essentially, they can control whether apps are enabled or not. So basically, at a tenant level, it needs to be enabled for apps. Like there is essentially, when we talk about governance, there is the ability. So by default, the answer is yes. But absolutely, at a tenant level, they could turn it off inside of the organization and say, hey, no external apps. Or you can actually have a whitelist. These are the approved apps. Or you can say anybody can create an app. And so that ability, and when I say anybody, it's basically the owner of the team can control what applications are on that team. So basically, if you're an owner of the team team members can't, they can add their own individual apps if it's allowed. So it's again, there's some throttles there. I don't know if that answered. Feel free to follow up with that if that answered your question.
Sure. Yeah, I think I was kind of more interested in the bot creation side of it. I could see some great potential there with some, especially with HR and our help desk.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. So as an example with bots, you can do quite a bit with the FAQ bot. When you start leveraging some of the Azure SDK, you do need to have the Azure licensing enabled. So there's some setup that has to be done on that side when you're leveraging that. I don't know if you wanted to provide a little bit more there, Ron.
No, there's a lot of things to consider to your point. I mean, it starts at the very top with governance and, what apps you want, which ones you don't, and then getting down to what you allow in a Teams and then within an actual tab. And do you allow people to sideload their apps and a bunch of other considerations that they unfortunately fall under this big bucket of governance. But just make sure that you're taking those incremental steps to get to the point to where you can start enabling your users is really where I'm going with this.
Yeah, and if you started with the those app templates that I was referring to, some of those do require the licensing be enabled first, but the FAQ bot doesn't. So it really depends on which one you're using. But Virtual Agents does have some licensing attached to it.
Yeah, because you have to look at some of the underlying pieces that app will deploy, like the FAQ pieces in Azure and the cognitive services pieces that you need in order to make that successful. So it's not something that you, even as a power user, would want to just endeavor on your own. You really want to partner with IT and your admins and maybe even other admins of different services like Azure and others to make sure that you're doing the right thing without ruffling too many feathers, right?
I have one about the chat window. Each time I chat with a person, the conversation is cumulative, and I may not speak to that person for a month. I go back to speak to that person. I look at the top of our chat window, and I'll see these conversations in there. And I'm wondering, is there a way? Is there a setting so that if I open a new conversation with a person, the top of my window just shows today's conversation?
So there is a tenant setting for Teams where you can essentially archive to where it's set to every day, so where it'll basically be a daily conversation. I'm not a big fan of that. There is some value in being able to have history. This idea that I can look back and see conversations that I've had with this person. But absolutely, there's a tenant setting where you can say, essentially archive every 30 days or every day.
Yeah, and just another point on that, it is cultural. So if you're using Teams more as a blurred line between chat and email, then that may need to be longer, right? But if there's something where, hey, I use email for a lot of my communication and that's not going to change. However, I don't need all that retention in Teams, then maybe that is something you want to go down. I would just caution that, working styles and culture normally determine some of that stuff.
Well, I'd like to say I appreciate the retention, and I need the retention. I just, in my current conversation, I don't want to see it in my chat screen. As like with Skype, how it would just send it to your email conversation box, something of that sort. So we have that ability, right? I'm sure we probably do.
Yeah, it automatically archives it. Unless you have retention turned on. So you can control that. By default, it does automatically store it in email.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
In exchange. Yep.